are they're doing well, whereas hospitality, food services, and sort of the lower wage jobs are suffering. And job losses are predominantly, as I mentioned, in the lower wage industries. Mortgage rates are at historic lows, though, and this is what's driving a lot of the crazy home buying right now. We're at 2.81%. I think the last couple of months we just keep hitting historic lows. And now just to give you a quick update on the California real estate market. So I guess, is it a good time to buy or sell? So the California Association of Realtors, they do a survey every month at the beginning of the month just to sort of get a grasp of consumer sentiment. Excuse me. And so 34% of consumers say it's a good time to buy, and 58% of homeowners say it's a good time to sell. And the reason why they say it's a good time to sell is because inventory levels are incredibly low. There's high competition for the few houses that are out there, and there are multiples driving up everything. So sellers are excited. Buyers, at the same time, they see the prices. It doesn't deter them, because when you have such low interest rates, your monthly payments are very low, and you end up living in your monthly payment. So the purchase price itself, unless you're going to sell it in 2 weeks, is not as big of an issue as the monthly payment, and the interest rates are making it possible to get into these homes despite the prices. So just to sort of go back to May, this is basically what happened once we shut down after the pandemic began. So existing home sales were down 41.4% year to year in May. Median home price was down at $588,070. We had 4.3 months of inventory. That means that if no other houses came online, everything would be gone in 4.3 months. That's actually a long time. Fast forward to today, September, we were up 21.2% year to year for existing home sales. Median home price was at a record high, $712,430. That's, if you look at May, it's more than 20% above May's median price. So things have really recovered since the stimulus, and just this K-shaped recovery that's really benefiting those in the technology sector, information services, software services, etc. Unsold inventory is at a record low, so there's literally only 2 months of supply, and after that it runs out. Median days on market, things are moving really, really quickly. So I mean, something comes on, it's listed, and 11 days later it's gone. And sales price to list price ratio, that means when the home is listed, say for $1 million, it's for the most part selling for $1 million. So things are going at price. There aren't that many discounts out there. As I mentioned, so sales continue to grow. September was the highest in over 10 years, and that number of 489,590 units is actually sort of an annualized number, assuming that we continue the pace we're on from September through the end of the year, which is unlikely, but it's still pretty insane. But what you can see is in the March, April, sort of May time period, that's when the beginning of the pandemic rolled around and shelter in place, and agents weren't allowed to show property, and so inventory was suppressed. And the spring buying season was kind of pushed to July, August, and September. And so it's just been going crazy, especially with the rates coming down. As I mentioned, inventory is at its lowest level in almost 15 years. Housing supply is tightened in all counties. So Los Angeles, we're about 45% less year to year than we were last year in terms of available supply to purchase. And San Diego, you've got minus 51.2%. But sales are up big in the sort of upper end of things, above 500, 600. And I know 500 doesn't sound like a lot for Los Angeles, but for the remainder of the state it is. And I guess what that's speaking to with the drop in sales below 500 is just the affordability of housing in our state. It's getting harder and harder to afford homes. Buyers are just going crazy and relentlessly taking advantage of the mortgage rates. Applications are way up. If you talk to almost any lender, they'll tell you they're overwhelmed, just too many applications for refinancing, for new loans coming in. And this is because the share of first-time home buyers is rising. It's the highest it's been in 10 years. And it's in large part due to the millennial demographic. With the housing market's sort of been waiting for millennials, the 22 to 39-year-olds, to really get into the market and start spending their money. There were all these studies done that said that demographic valued experience more than sort of home ownership. But now with COVID, you can't really travel to far-flung places, and you can't have as many experiences, at least for the short term, that you could have previously. And people are working from home, and they want home offices, and they want an outdoor space. So they're looking at their savings, and they're saying, oh, and I can make that monthly payment. I've got it down. I'm going to jump into the market and be more comfortable. And they represent basically a 38% share of the market. They're the buyer pool that's really driving prices up, especially into the $1 to $3 million price point. Sellers who are selling to these millennials, they're leaving the state at a really high rate, so at about 30%, which is on par with the highest rate in 15 years. And the Los Angeles sellers, they're decamping to the Inland Empire. And then those in the Inland Empire, they're leaving the state. So it's sort of this interesting migration slowly out of California for a lot of homeowners, just for affordability purposes and also quality of life. And now I'm going to jump into the Los Angeles market. So this is a chart that basically looks at the single family home monthly market activity from January through the end of Q3, so September 30th. And what you'll see at the beginning of the year, things started out pretty normal. Inventory was about the same as it was in 2019. Sales were a bit higher toward the end of February, and then trailing into March, and then COVID came and everything shut down. The normal spring buying season was basically, it basically didn't happen. Then things opened up. Inventory started coming online. Rates went down, and people just started jumping on homes, and sales by September were higher than they were at this point last year. All right, so Q3 market report. So this is just neighborhood snapshots, sort of average sales price. So you look at Beverly Hills, Pacific Palisades, and Santa Monica up there. Those are sort of some of your higher end neighborhoods, and you see a decrease in price year over year from the quarterly period. And that decrease is really due in large part to homes that are, let's say, over 4 million. They're not selling as rapidly as they were last year, but in the $1 to $3 million range, especially say in Santa Monica or the Palisades, things are flying, and it's very difficult to win those multiple offer situations. You also see large increases in price in areas like Westchester, Park Hills Heights, so that's Limerick Park, Windsor Hills, Ladera Heights. These are neighborhoods where you're getting a lot of first-time home buyers getting in. Additionally, Pasadena is another one where you've seen huge price growth because there's actually a decent amount of inventory there, especially in Northeast, Southeast Pasadena, and you can get a nice house with a decent amount of land, and it's a great entry point area. The condo market it's softened a tiny bit, but the numbers are a little misleading because what really has happened is that condos over $2 million are not selling as well, just because I think people are saying, well, I could afford a nice house for over $2 million, and I could my own backyard and privacy. I don't have to get in an elevator. But condos, and especially townhomes in the range of say $1 to $2 million, are doing pretty well. And then just to expand on the neighborhood snapshots, one thing to note are the number of sales closed and the jump in the number of sales. So from Q2 to Q3, you had 176% jump in Santa Monica in sales, and that's as a result of more inventory coming online. There was no inventory really in Q2. Let's see. And then you have Venice holding steady. Culver City is down a tiny bit, and that's really only in part because it has just been on a torrid pace the last 12 years. So things have to mediate a little bit. And then you can just see, taking all these areas together, overall inventory is down about 10%. Condo snapshot. So you can see Marina Del Rey sales went up 132% from Q2 to Q3. Again, COVID really helped to suppress inventory. And then just to look at new signed contracts. So new signed contracts are those homes that have gone into escrow. So we are up for September, we were up 11.8% over last year. But what you'll see is that the gains were all in the 600K plus range, whereas below that, there has been less that's entered in, less that's gone into contract than last year, speaking to this affordability issue in the state of California. New listings are down everywhere. Inventory is low. So September, we were 52% less listings in LA County than the year before. And especially at the lower end of the market, there have been even less listings, just sort of, again, speaking to that affordability. And then we've got the election coming up. And I guess what's going to probably be a determinant of some sort of impact on home prices is going to be who wins and what economic policies they're going to bring to bear. But what you'll see with past elections, so I looked at the past 6 cycles for average price. I looked in certain neighborhoods. I sort of aggregated data from Santa Monica to Venice to Los Feliz to Silver Lake. And what you'll find is that 4 out of the 6 cycles, the average price increased quarter over quarter through the election. So it doesn't look like, I mean, there is a potential, like 2008, 2009 was the housing crisis, and we're in the COVID crisis right now. So one never knows what it will look like in the end. But one thing to note is if you bought during the election cycle of 96, 97, and you're still holding your home right now, you've done pretty well if you're looking at it as an investment. Another thing to note is that home sales across these various neighborhoods tend to follow the normal real estate cycle, where you'll have sort of a more robust Q3, Q4 slows down because you have holiday, and Q1 is sort of a ramp up, and by the time Q1 is at its end, you've got a bunch of sales that are already happening in Q2, and the spring buying season starts and things take off. So we'll see what happens with this election, but it does cause a little, it does give rise to some uncertainty, and there could be opportunities if you're in the market to buy, to maybe find somebody who is scared, perhaps a frightened seller who's had something on the market for a little bit, and maybe they're willing to take a cut in their expected price because they think something really bad is going to happen with the election. But this data sort of shows that might not be the case. And then just looking forward, price outlook. So with the high-end home sales, the low rates, and the tight supply, I think prices will stay elevated for at least the next couple of months. And if they do fall, it will be in the single-digit percentiles. And then another elephant in the room, foreclosures could become a problem, but it's not like the housing crisis of 2008. We've got government on board this time. So you've got forbearance options, there are 5-year workouts. There aren't as many people who have crazy ninja loans or adjustable rate mortgages where they put 0 down. Most people have a lot of equity in their homes, and there's also not this sort of massive amount of inventory that there was in 2008. So since there's so little inventory and there's such high demand, somebody who may be delinquent on their mortgage has the opportunity most likely to get out of their home either through selling it and breaking even, or maybe taking a little bit less, or maybe they make some money. So the options are a little better than they were before. And just sort of a note on mortgages in forbearance. So 6.3% of mortgages are currently in forbearance. So that's 3.2 million. I think we were at around 4.1 million at the peak. And then initially prior to COVID, I think it was 0.25% of mortgages were in forbearance. So it's a market change, but the Mortgage Bankers Association says that about 55% of people whose mortgages are in forbearance are actually just paying their mortgage every month like they normally would. They're just using the forbearance for just added insurance, but there's still potential for a good amount of foreclosures, but nothing like 2008. Delinquency rate reached record high. So serious delinquencies, those over, I don't know, 90 days, or around 4.2% or so, 4.4%. In the state of California, we're at 3.7%, I believe, right now. And I think in 2010, at the peak, it was 15.7% were seriously delinquent. So we're pretty far away from that number. And then just looking forward, I think median price will go up slightly next year. Sales will increase. Hopefully we'll have more inventory in general come on the market. And then just to sort of get back to the 10-foot level, I'm sure some of you are thinking of buying and selling, and just really wanted to quickly sort of talk about the why, how, what, and where of buying and selling. And I know this stuff looks very like sort of elementary school simplistic, but it's just good to keep this stuff in mind. It's good to ask yourself, why am I buying? Like, what are your motivations? Are you looking at it as an investment? Are you looking for a better school district? How much can you spend? You need to get pre-approved in this market. Almost every time I go to a showing, they require that my buyer have a pre-approval letter because COVID. The showing rules are a lot more strict. We can only have 3 people in a home at one time. We have to sign a lot of entry forms, liability waivers. So people really want to know you're serious about seeing their home, and serious about potentially making an offer. And then I guess you want to ask yourself, what do you need? How many beds, baths, your location requirements, and then where can you afford to buy? And then on the sell side, it's what are your motivations for selling? Are you upgrading? Are you market timing? It's probably not the best idea. Nobody ever does well market timing. And then you want to ask yourself, how do you sell your home? You probably want to work with an agent to help you understand the market, do a comparative market analysis of properties that are similar to yours that have sold in the past 6 months, help you understand the profile of the buyer who might want your home so that you can market them properly. You can also assess the condition of your house, see what fixes you need to make to get it ready. And then you want to ask yourself, what's your pricing strategy? Do you want to price at market? Do you want to price just a little bit below market, maybe to drive a multiple offer situation? Or do you want to price aspirationally, which basically means you don't listen to your agent and you price it very high and hope that one person comes along? And sometimes it happens. And then where will you move? Do you need to sell before you can buy? And yeah, so this stuff's simple, but it's just good to keep in mind as you go through the process. And now I'm going to jump into Q&A, and here's my contact information just in case you have any questions for me that I don't answer during the Q&A. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and thank you again for joining me. All right. Hopefully I didn't go too fast.
So the first question I got is, will we have access to the presentation? So
yes.
Thank you.
I can send it around.
Yeah, thank you for getting in front of that. And then Arun Khan, CBS 20 asked, what do you think about the rental market?
The rental market, I think, is going to soften. I mean, you see rental signs all around Santa Monica, and especially, I mean, if you're a landlord right now and you're putting a property on for rent. I mean, hopefully you have a great property, but November, December, that's the holiday time. It's typically a terrible time to put your home on for rent. And rents have been, I think we had in July, they went down like 0.2% for the first time in, I think, 10 years. So the rental market is softening a bit, is what I've seen. Obviously, they're great homes and people price things well and they go quickly, but there's a lot of vacancy right now.
I will follow on that. Is that true for homes as well as for apartments?
I think less for homes than apartments because people they're looking for that outdoor space, they're looking for the office, and maybe they're not ready to buy, or maybe they haven't really assessed whether it makes sense to rent versus buy, which is another reason why if you look at your savings account and you see, oh, I have a pretty good amount of money and I want to move from my apartment and I pay, I don't know, $3,000 a month now, and I'm going to move into something because I've been living in the $3,000 a month one for whatever 5 years. I'm going to move into something equivalent or better, which is probably going to be $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Does it make sense for me to look at purchasing something? What will my monthly payment be? So I've seen a lot of people sort of reassessing that, and that's hurting the rental market a tiny bit, just because you have people thinking that way because the rates are so low.
Right. Thank you. So Jacob B asked, he did join a little late. He gives that disclaimer. He's not sure if you covered the impact of the real estate propositions on the real estate market, which
No.
I don't believe you did, and wants to know, will the regulations regarding renters not having to pay rent until February eventually spill over into the reduced overall real estate pricing?
I think it may spill over into reduced prices for sort of multifamily buildings. So there could be a slowdown in sales of multifamily and sort of some price decline, but nothing major. I mean, I've sold a few multifamily lately, and I mean, it's still very competitive, but prices have fallen a little since last year. And that's just as a result of this rent moratorium. And I've actually come into contact with sellers who I'll call and I'll say, oh, it looks like you've got one of the units is vacant and one of them's full. And they'll say, well, full disclosure, the person living in X unit hasn't paid rent since last April and we can't get them out. The rent control board won't let us get them out. And they're just stuck and they have to disclose that. So the moratorium, I mean, nobody really knows what's going to happen with that, and nobody knows how well renters are going to be protected. So a lot of people who have the ability, I mean, anybody, I think you just have to sort of write a note to your landlord saying you have a difficult financial situation because of COVID, even if you're making your salary. But a lot of people are paying their rent because they're just so uncertain as to what's going to happen. How's that going to be collected? How's it going to impact their credit?
Right.
So it's kind of wild.
Thank you. Diana Borges asked, is there a short-term rental season in LA?
Short-term rental season is typically summer. So that is, I mean, that's when we see the bulk of short-term rentals.
And Ray D asked, any comments on the condo market? I'm gonna add beyond what you mentioned in the presentation.
No, I mean, I think that townhomes and sort of units that have direct entry are moving more quickly. And I don't know whether it's just completely a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, but I don't think people they're not so keen on getting in elevators, although I've had clients buy in multi-unit buildings where they have a communal front door and communal garage, and it's just sort of preference. And in the markets, so like your Westside markets like Santa Monica and Marina del Rey, where where you have sort of strong sales history and strong price appreciation over time, and there's a smoothness. So it's like if you bought this year for $1 million, over time it's going to go up. It's just, and if the market hits the skids, it's not going to go down that much, and it's going to come right back when the market starts to go. So people are buying condos.
Thank you. Tom Halas says, thank you for this presentation, Robert. What would your arguments be for and against using an agency such as Redfin or Zillow when you're a seller? Try to take off your hat as a realtor, please.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of taking off my hat as a realtor, it's just the idea that, well, I guess from the realtor perspective, you're working with a discount brokerage, and they're very focused on the transactional piece of things and not necessarily the emotional piece, or even they just want to get from A to B as quickly as they can, because they're salaried employees for the most part, and some of them are really good. I've come across some good Redfin agents, but at the same time, when they bring buyers to my listings, it's just, and they put in an offer, they do no inspections, they're not really so concerned, just because it's all about volume for them, because they don't get commissions really. I don't know.
That's a great analogy, the discount brokerage.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have your house put on by discount brokerage, people are going to look at it and think they're going to get a discount, and a lot of agents do know how to run roughshod over the Redfin agents, so let's keep that in mind.
Janine Gaylard asked, how is real estate development projects being impacted?
Well, so real estate development sort of slowed down in a lot of, I guess, which developments are you looking at? Sort of major multi-unit buildings, or are you just talking about new construction of single family homes? I guess some clarity.
Janine, can you please clarify? I'm going to take you off mute, or you can unmute yourself if you want to just jump in here and say a little bit more.
I guess I was asking more generally, is it stopping projects, or, in terms of, the buildings with lots of the amenities were sort of popular for a while, but now that it can't really use the amenities, or people who are building with amenities rethinking what they were doing? Is it resulting in different types of projects, or projects just not happening?
No, projects. So what I've seen in projects are still happening, and a lot of these developers are just sort of looking 1 or 2 years out now. They have a longer time horizon. A lot of this stuff has already been pre-sold, but yeah, there's just a longer time horizon, I think. But there's still an obvious expectation that eventually COVID's going to go away. Not go away, but there will be a vaccine, or there will be very strong treatments, and things will normalize to a certain degree, and there won't be issues with these sort of new luxury developments. On the single family side, there have been just a ton of new permits taken out because the inventory is so low. It makes sense for developers to jump back in the market again. So that's happening on the single family end.
Thank you.
Philip has asked, are there particular resources or methods to monitor inventory before you're ready to buy?
I mean, maybe there are some tools on Zillow, but just a good agent who can sort of help you sift through that inventory, just because we go out and we see all manner of properties, and we have access to the agents, and we know what's going to come on, and we can talk to them and get all the details about it. But yeah, I think that monitoring inventory, the best way to do it is just use a good agent who can pull all the stats for you, and yeah, can listen to you and understand what your requirements are, and sort of match those requirements to inventory that's coming on.
Okay. Any other questions for Robert?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all of your insights. Incredibly helpful. LA real estate is, we're all from New York in one way or another. And so we came with this idea that, the New York real estate market is peak everything, but living here, we know that that's not quite true.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving us some facts and information to support that and help us make some informed decisions during a really challenging time. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
And if anybody has further questions, feel free to reach out. And I also have your information so I can send you the report and stuff like that.
Great. And we'll be posting this recording on our Facebook page and following up over email as well. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you.
Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you.